In this video, we're going to be having a go at carbon skinning using the starter kit from Composites. So I am a sucker for carbon fibre. I have been for years. I love the stuff. I love the weight saving, I love the look, I love the rigidity, the strength of it. It's a brilliant, brilliant material. So now that the bumper on the Evo is almost ready with Daniel at Obelix to go back on the car, I thought it'd be kind of cool to pull together the front bumper with the rear blade, which is obviously carbon from Rallytech in the UK. I thought, why not skin the front blade that goes below the intercooler, and then it's kind of like a nice tie-in with the back of the car. And obviously there's going to be other carbon fibre bits fitted on the car as well, but the only way I can do the blade is to skin it. So I've got the kit to do that, as I said, from Composites. So we'll have a look at the kit. We'll obviously do the skinning itself. I've done it before many times years ago and had pretty decent success with it. I've done Kevlar and I've done carbon, and we'll also have a little look at the different kind of carbon products that are out there, from the cheap stuff, which is, well, the cheapest is the skinning that we're going to do here, to the kind of wet lay, to the pre-preg autoclave ridiculous stuff, just to show you the difference between them, and then yeah, we'll crack on with the job. Okay, so this is the kit from Composites. It's the starter kit, so it's 30 centimeters by 100 centimeters roll of carbon cloth. We'll take a look at this first. I've also bought some spray adhesive from 3M, and I'll explain why I've bought that in a minute. But yeah, let's have a look at the kit and see what we've got. So I'll put the price up in the video as well for this kit. It wasn't that expensive. I bought it from the EU site of Composites since Brexit happened. So we've got a number of paintbrushes for the application of the epoxy and the resin. We've got cups for mixing things in. We've got spatulas for mixing things. We've got gloves. We've got polishing compound. We have got different grades of wet and dry paper. We've got the black epoxy base coat with the mixing ratio there by weight. So it's basically 100 mil of that to 50 mil of hardener. So there's our hardener. And then we've got the epoxy resin top coat here. So this is the clear stuff that will give it that beautiful finish and give it the protection when it's all fitted. And then most importantly, here is our carbon fibre cloth. You can see it there. So this is basically raw carbon fibre. This is how it is kind of, you know, produced essentially. It's really cool stuff. Very itchy, but really cool stuff. So that's everything that we need to skin this here, which is the blade from the front bumper. I've already sanded it down and smoothed it a little bit, and it needs to be a bit rough so that the epoxy base coat will take to it. I'll explain the process anyway in a minute, but first, this is obviously the cheapest way to make something in carbon. So it's taking an existing part and it's basically putting the base coat on the epoxy, which is like the glue, and then you wrap the cloth over the part, so it's not replacing the part. You're adding weight and you're adding volume and size to it, and then you put in the clear coat on top, so it will look like it's a carbon fibre part, but in actual fact it's just a fiberglass part with a bit of carbon fibre fabric laid on top of it. So that is the cheapest way to get carbon fibre in your life. Then the next level up to that is wet lay, as they call it. So you can see here, this was a rear door card for my old Megane. You can see, hopefully, in the cloth, you can see where it's a bit wavy. So this has been hand laid again, and kind of resin put on it, but this has been put into a mold or just been laid flat. So normally you'd have your mold for the part, you would put resin in, then you'd put the cloth in, and then you put fiberglass on the back of it to sort of build up the strength. So you can see here, we've got our fiberglass on the back. So it's thin, about 1.5 mil. It's light, but it's not that light because it's got fiberglass, which is obviously heavier, and it's not rigid at all, really. But again, a lot of car parts that you'll buy, like probably the bonnet that I'll get on the Evo and the boot lid, they will be wet lay carbon. So it will be carbon, moulded carbon that's been laid by hand over the top of fiberglass. And you get the look and you get some of the weight saving, but you don't get like the full proper experience. It's really good stuff. Most parts are that because of the expense. To go to the pre-preg autoclave stuff like you see on bloody Pagani and cars like that, it's ridiculous money, but obviously the benefits are awesome, but I don't think the price justifies it for most people. This here is pre-preg carbon, so you can see the difference. So you can see that the pattern, I hope you can see that the pattern is absolutely perfect, because this has been put in basically a bag with resin, and then it's been either pressed or it has been sort of vacuum pulled to infuse the cloth with the resin. So perfect finish, ultra light, and this is the same thickness as this, but ultra rigid, ultra strong, and yeah, I mean, it looks fantastic. But this would probably cost maybe, I don't know, 20 quid, whereas to do the same in pre-preg, you're talking, God, at least double that, I would have thought. Please correct me in the video with prices, I'm not exactly sure, but it ain't cheap to do stuff with pre-preg. So those are the 3 different varieties of carbon finish that you can get, and kind of the drawbacks and benefits to each. Mainly cost is the biggest kind of benefit to the cheaper two. So now you know that, let's crack on with getting started on this. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to lay out our cloth onto the part, and because I am not wrapping a part completely, normally you would put the cloth over the part and then you would trim it from behind the part, so you'd have kind of like, you know, hidden bits that don't have to look that nice. But I don't have that luxury with these sides here. So what we're going to have to do is lay this out, make sure that we've got it straight, make sure we've got right positioning and things like that, and then we're going to have to apply the spray adhesive to the back of the carbon. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to cut the carbon without it fraying, so we can get a nice perfect straight edge. And then when we've done that, we can apply our epoxy base coat to this. It takes a couple of hours for that to get tacky, and then once we've done that, we can lay our cloth on, and then that really is kind of like, for this kind of job, that's the major part of the job done once we've done that. So let us start by getting this out, getting it laid up, and getting it kind of trimmed down to size.
A few moments later.
Okay, so now we've glued the back of the carbon cloth. What that's done is that's made it a bit more rigid and easier to trim and cut. You can see it's keeping its shape. In hindsight, I could and should have jigged the cloth a little bit better, just to make it totally even, because now it's kind of set with the glue slightly skewed. So that's why I'm kind of doing it at an angle to get the pattern right. So we'll see how well that goes. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to mark up with tape where I need to cut to get the perfect sort of line, and then I'll do the same thing top, do the same thing bottom, and then we can basically trim the cloth to put it into place on the blade.
A few inches later.
Okay, about an hour later, I've done lots of little tiny tweaks of trims and things, and I've basically run the carbon to 1 mil away from the edges, both sides, and I've got it as straight as I can. So now that that's done, I'm going to take this off, and then we can get the epoxy base coat in place, and then we can hopefully get this stuck up. And then, like I say, that is the difficult part of the job, in my opinion, done.
Eventually.
So it's been about 2.5 hours now, and you can see that if we press, it's tacky, doesn't come off on our fingers, so it's ready for the carbon. So there we go, that is the carbon laid onto the blade, looking pretty straight and neat. Luckily I've managed to get it in a good position, which was a bit of a save from me, because like I say, when I use the glue, lesson learned here for anyone watching, make sure that the cloth is laid out and is totally flat before you put any of the glue on to hold the weave in place. So I managed to avoid that being an issue. So I've trimmed the top edge off too. Once I've put the first coat of resin on, or maybe the second coat, we'll see, I'm going to then Dremel that off, because that just wants to be totally flush, and I will probably paint that top edge with gloss black or something. Like I'm going to paint these edges here with a bit of gloss black just to sort of tidy them up. But that is it for now. We need to wait about 2 hours for the base coat to cure fully, so it doesn't kind of interfere with the resin when we put the resin on, and then we can put the first thin coat of resin on, and that'll then basically make sure that the cloth doesn't get interfered with. It's fixed, it's done, it's dusted, and then you can kind of tidy it up a little bit, and then it's building up the layers of the resin, sanding and stuff. So it's just a very time consuming process, but not that tricky to do. The most difficult bit for me is this bit, in my opinion, is getting the cloth straight and looking good. So anyway, we will wait now and come back a little bit later and carry on with that first coat of resin.
2 hours later.
Okay, time has passed now and the epoxy is dry, so we can mix up our first coat of resin and get it applied. Okay, that's the first coat of resin on now, just to seal everything. Just got to let that cure for about 8 hours now. So we'll come back tomorrow and see how it looks, and then we can get trimming it and then get putting on the other layers of resin.
Tomorrow.
Okay, so next day we are here and it's all nice and dry and hard now. And you can already see like the carbon is getting rigidity, which is great. So we can, stuck down. So we can now, yeah, all good. We can get trimming off this top edge, getting that nice and straight, and sort of improving this bottom edge here before applying more resin. So I have now finished cutting it and sanding it down so it's all nice and smooth and looking okay. I've tidied up the back. Next thing to do is to start adding the layers of resin. So it's going to be 3 coats of resin. So it's coat of resin, 2 hours to go tacky, coat of resin, 2 hours, coat of resin, and then let it cure basically for 8 hours plus. And then we're almost done.
Early the next morning.
Okay, so here we are with the blade, where we're up to. Obviously it's upside down at the moment, but I ended up putting 4, if you can see it, ended up putting 4 layers of the resin on. So that is now hardened and I can start sanding it down, moving up through the grits from the kit and getting it all smooth, and then I'll kind of work out what I want to do from that point in terms of painting the edges and stuff like that. But I'm not going to video that because who wants to see me sand? So we'll join the action in about a second where it's all sanded and prepped and we can go from there.
12 seconds later.
Okay, that is the sanding done now. So we're ready for our last coat of resin. I've done a fair job of flattening it off. This little area here, if you can pick that up on the camera, that has just started to go through the resin, which is always an issue with doing this kind of stuff, is you're never quite sure if you're just going to go through the resin into the cloth. So I think that's going to be okay. When we get the resin on, that's going to hide that and we're not really going to notice it. But yeah, let us get the last coat on and then we can kind of take a look at it and see how it turns out.
"48 hours later."
Okay, so here we are, over 2 days later, letting it harden properly. Hopefully you can see that all right on the camera. There's a few little areas where it's going to need sanding now, and there's some runs on the backside. I have left it out to kind of heat cure in the sun as well, because it's a hot day. Here it has been hot, and if this is going to be on the car and it's going to be in the sun a lot, then you need to kind of do that. Otherwise you can find that the resin can sort of sink a little bit and not coat very well with hot weather. So I've done a little bit of that too, but the reason why there's runs and there shouldn't be, you shouldn't need to do much sanding at this stage, whereas I'm going to have to do quite a bit of sanding, is because I went through to the fabric just in one area, so I've had to build it back up again. So we'll get onto the 400 to the 1200, so it's 400, 800, 1200 now with the wet and dry, just wet sanding it to get that final finish, and then it's the final polish and we can seal it with some of that awesome Purest protection ceramic and we should be done. So let's get that sorted.
3 hours later.
Okay, so there we go. We've finished the sanding now and it's looking pretty flat. I don't think we can get it much better than that because the underlying part wasn't perfect. But now you've got 2 options. We can either just polish it with the cutting compound that came with the kit and then put some of the, I'm going to put the Purest protection ceramic on top just to give it that perfect kind of silky finish. Or we can do coat of clear lacquer and then polish it from there. That's what I'm going to do, because that's the problem with when you do carbon skinning, is it's not an exact science. You're never sure how close you are to going through the resin, and I don't like that. So I think now it's all finished, a coat of clear lacquer will basically give it a nice even result anyway, and I know that there aren't areas where, oh, it could be close to going through the lacquer, the resin, sorry. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we can get it polished and we're done.
Tomorrow.
Okay, that is it. We are done, finally. I finished off with some 1200, 1500 and 2000 grade wet and dry on the clear lacquer, and then I used some of the awesome PX1 Purest light polish just to make it pop. I will put some clips up at the end of this video just to show it you in more detail. Now I can get it off to Daniel at Obelix and it can be part of the bumper install. Hopefully it looks good on the car, we will see, because the bumper's silver. You'll have to wait till, and I'll have to wait till the part 2 video of the bumper install, which hopefully will be coming in about a week's time, I think. Yeah, so we'll see how it looks. Disappointed, as I've said earlier, that I went through the resin into the cloth. It is very difficult to avoid doing that because it's not an exact science. You don't know how thick the resin is and how much you've sanded off, so you've got to be very careful. And unfortunately, even though I was very careful, I went through, so it's so easily done. But I think I've got away with it. I've asked a few people to kind of find the area and they haven't been able to, so I'm aware it's there, but I don't think it's really noticeable in the finished product and shouldn't be noticeable on the car. So just about got away with it, which is really lucky, because if you sand too much into the fabric, it's done. There's no coming back from it. You've got to reskin it, and that really wasn't an option with this. So final thought is on the Easy Composites starter kit. Fabric, fantastic. I think they also do like a pro fabric that is already easier to sort of position and is already sort of a bit firmer and easier to cut. That's probably the better thing to go for if you're a beginner or if you're experienced. I say I've done this before, and getting that cloth right was a bit of a pain in the arse, and I kind of managed to save that as well, because I kind of screwed that up with the 3M glue. Everything else in the kit, the resin is awesome stuff, like no bubbles whatsoever. Goes on clean and clear and smooth. Great coverage. You've got loads of stuff in the bottles. You can do quite a few bits with that. The base coat, absolutely brilliant. No issues with that whatsoever. I think there could have been more cups because of all the different coats of resin you need to do, and there could have been more paintbrushes because you can't clean them and reuse them. It's quite difficult to do, although I tried. So definitely need more brushes. And yeah, I think you need more cloth, really. Because I've kind of used, just in this one part, I've kind of like used the cloth. There's not a lot left I can do with that cloth now. But other than that, yeah, brilliant piece of kit. I've bought lots of stuff from Easy Composites over the years, and their stuff is great. So there we go. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching this. Hopefully you find it useful, and maybe it's something you want to have a go at yourself. It is great fun. Until next time, possibly seeing it on the car.